Well, Veda is a special subject. Why I say is that it's a special subject.
Yeah.
And it requires, a certain sort of two things: a familiarity with unfamiliar language, unfamiliar symbols, and then a capacity to enter into the spirit of that symbol. What the modern mind is lacking is that it is so much accustomed to logical reasoning that anything that is not according to the intellect demand, it will think bizarre and queer and strange, and it always thinks like that. Now, Veda is written at a time when what modern psychologists call depth psychology was actually in operation. What is called depth psychology. That is to say, there are symbols in inner life which are seen, and in the primitive religions, so called, which are not primitive, but in the beginning of all cultures, the people were not intellectual minded. The intellect was not so developed, but capacity to enter into the depth of psychological existence of one's own self was there. And when they entered in, there was no language as understood by the intelligence, but there was a, and they came in contact with this world of symbols. They saw things, and what they saw, they expressed, and they expressed in the language that was current at that time. Now, this what they saw is so different from what the mind is accustomed now to think that for the modern mind to put itself into that world is a tremendous effort, first of all. And it is as if you enter another world altogether, different world. And that is why Vedic studies have become now, a field for scholars to go on with, their battling ground for interpretation and meaning of words and meaning of this and so on. I will give you main two or three basic approach to the Veda. The Western people, when they first thought of the Veda, they were ruling India. You must never forget this fact. However impartial the scholars may be, and however rational they may claim to be, they could not get out of the idea that they were rulers of India. And this being the rulers gave them a superiority complex unconscious to them, which always made them think that therefore these people could not have a great culture. And that their idea was that they were at the top of human culture in Victorian times, and now everything must lead up to that. So, when they came to the study of the Veda, they said they must be primitive. How can they be advanced? This was their unwritten background on which they proceeded. And the result was that they read what their mind had already prepared them to read. They never wanted to understand the Veda. They only wanted to find out social custom, ceremonials, you know, laws of inheritance, history, marriage rights, something with regard to the outer life of the people. To an Indian, this appears the last approach because no Indian reads anything of the Veda for this thing. It is a sacred book meant to give you the innermost knowledge. Veda means the highest knowledge. To the Hindu or to the Indian mind, Veda is the revelation of the divine knowledge. There is no greater authority in religious life than Veda. He never can think that Veda could be approached by anybody in his common sense to find out the customs of the Vedic times, to find out marriage systems and so on. That it never enters. And I gave this instance at one place in Africa when I was addressing a cosmopolitan audience. I said there was a priest friend of ours who was there. So I told him that this Western people's study of the Veda is like that of an ornithologist who takes up Shelley's skylark and uses it for finding out the life of the skylark. It is just that which the Western people have done with the Veda. You take a Shelley's skylark and he says openly, bird thou never wert. And he's dealing with a bird. Now, if you take that as a starting point to find out the life of the skylark, where was it living, how did it feed, what did it do, you will never come to anything. That is exactly what I've done with the Veda in the Indian, religious life. So there was a social life, but the Vedas were not written for social life. To give you a picture of social life, if something happens to be there of Vedic times, it is absolutely accidental, by absolute hazard. And to say that what you interpret about that social life is right is to claim omniscience almost. How do you know what they meant, what you make them out to be? You see? That was one. History, social custom, religious rites, marriage, social life, and inheritance, and all these kind of things. That is what they wanted. They didn't want to know what the Veda has to say because they never believed that the Veda had anything to say. That's one. Now, second point is that because in post, you can say, Upanishadic time, a period came before Gautam Buddha where Vedic sacrifice became a current ceremony in many parts of North India at least. In central India, North India, ceremony, sacrifice became a very current ceremonial. And it became a craze. Craze in the sense that that was the center of Vedic life, against which Gautam Buddha raised his voice, as you all know. If you have studied Buddhism, you will see that Gautam Buddha, first time after, means 2500 BC, remember. At that time, sacrifice became something external and material. So, voice of man like Gautam Buddha was raised to restore mind of India to original religious impulse of searching for the truths. He said, what is this religious ceremony you are doing? What is use of sacrifice? So the people who were addicted to outer ceremonials and had exteriorized completely the sense of the Veda in Indian life, they argued that this was a holy act, performing of sacrifice. So he said, how can it be holy? And he gave the argument that when you put an animal into the sacrifice and you say it goes to heaven because it is sacred, you see, really speaking, offering is a sacred thing. You see, it is when something is, it is always a victim that is given in sacrifice regarded as sanctified. So he said, if you think so, then why didn't you send your father, put your father into the sacrifice? They can go to heaven. You see? Now that was the line of argument Gautam Buddha adopted to get the people's mind away from the external materialized ceremonial that from which it had taken. That deterioration you mark. After that deterioration, about 2000 years after, even more, came a commentator in the 14th century. Now Gautam Buddha is 2500 BC. Remember, Gautam Buddha is 2500 BC. Yes, of course. 500 years before Christ. And that was his protest then. Then, after about how many years it makes? 1400, 14th century, 15th century. It makes how many? About 2500 years after, or 3000 years after, comes a commentator who writes a big commentary on the Veda. His name is Sayana. He is a very classic in the sense that he has completely written a full commentary on the Veda. Now, this writing puts that ceremony of sacrifice, outer ritual, as a central secret of Veda. Why the Western mind was misled. I am giving you also the history of why the Western mind was partly misled. Sayana, the commentator of Veda in the 15th century, wrote his whole commentary on the basis that Veda was ritual.
How do you spell his name?
Sayana, S-A-Y-A-N-A.
Okay.
You see, Sayana. He was the prime minister of a state, and he called about 300 pandits from all over India and distributed the Veda, in different parts and gave them for interpretation, and he himself edited it. That is how it was, you see, in those times. So here comes Marie. Come along.
Good evening. Can I take some more chairs and room there if you need more? Here's one here.
Oh, that is.
That wouldn't be comfortable for John, so I do. But there's some room in that little breakfast room right there, Marissa.
Well, that's a nice looking kid you got there. Sure is handsome.
discussing the Vedic interpretation, Veda, Rig Veda of India. So the commentator Sayana in the 14th century, when he gathered the 300 Pandits and got this commentary written, he wrote it on the basis that Veda was only ceremonial of sacrifice. The Western scholars came afterwards, after 3 centuries, on the basis of this, and they afterwards naturally accepted this interpretation that it was only external ceremonial. Then, of course, naturally, they said that Sayana may be an Indian who believes in the Vedas sacredness and the ceremony being most important part of Vedic, meaning. But we are people who want to know history, sociology, all kinds of racial traits and customs that were prevailed in the times of the Veda. So it is only for that they approach the Veda. And the result was, as I told you, of a man taking up the skylark of Shelley and using it for bird science. Well, you can never get at anything near the skylark, you see. So that is what has, yeah, that is what has happened to the Veda. And before Sayana came, about 1000 years before Sayana, means about some people say 1300 BC, but the date is not certain. 1300 BC, there was one first commentator on Veda who preceded Sayana by about 1500 years. You see, 1400 and this 1300 BC. So you see a difference of about 1500 years or 1000 years. His name is Yaska. He's the first commentator on Veda. He prepared a dictionary and he prepared a grammatical note. Dictionary containing about 497 or like that, 500 words about. And he said these words are used in the Veda in this sense, but class of words, not that. 12 words which mean so much so. 200 words meaning water. 100 words meaning motion, movement. That is his dictionary. That is the first commentary on the Veda. And then he wrote a grammatical note of about 450 words, tracing the origin, giving the etymology of the words used in the Veda, illustrated from the hymns of the Rig Veda, giving the illustration that this word is used here, it must mean this, and he tried to trace the origin, you see. Now, in that, whatever the detail, we leave out the detail, but in his introduction, this Yaska writes that each hymn of the Veda is capable of being interpreted in three senses. This is Yaska before Sayana. And he says three senses. One is the material sense, another is the middling sense, you say, and the third is the spiritual sense. So each hymn, according to Yaska, is capable of having three interpretations. That is one. And the second thing he said was that there are so many current schools of interpretation. Yaska mentions in his book, you see, that there are many schools current, and wherever point comes, he disagrees or agrees. And if you count the number of schools and individuals whose name he puts, is about 19 or 20. So over and above the three main interpretations to which each hymn is, possible of being interpreted, he counts about 20 people and schools who happen to have their own interpretation of Veda in the time of Yaska himself. So in 1300 BC, there were more than 25 schools of interpretation of Veda, pre-Sayana. You see, now that is the basis, and this now there. So now we go, Sri Aurobindo's coming to his interpretation is very historically interesting because he was not a scholar of Veda. He didn't want to read the Veda. He didn't want to write anything on the Veda. He was busy with his own spiritual yoga, sadhana. It was in Chandranagar when he was staying for some time to continue his yoga that he came across some experiences. And those experiences he could not fully interpret himself. He could not interpret the experiences. But at the end of meditation, he used to see two or three goddesses, figure-like goddesses, just passing like that. And he could not always know what it meant. He thought that some beings of the higher world, divine beings, are perhaps there when I meditate. They come and either they participate or they do something. But he couldn't fully understand. Then, when he was just closing his, coming to the end of his stay in Chandranagar, one day it happened that the four goddesses that were going, he heard the word Saraswati, Ila, Bharati, Sarma. So he thought perhaps Saraswati was well known because that is an Indian name of a deity that presides over art and poetry. You see, goddess of art and poetry. That he knew that nobody requires any introduction, Saraswati or Bharati or Ila. But Sarma was something only Veda. Sarma is a word which is used for a power in the Veda only. So he said, what is this Sarma? He used to see other things also. This is what he remembered. And that he took the Veda just to know where was Sarma and what it meant. He didn't have any commentary. Only the Vedic text came into his hand. By pure accident, he was, as he says, by happy accident, I was completely brought in contact with the Veda with complete ignorance of the commentary of Sayana. If he had read that, perhaps his mind would have gone that track. But he didn't take it. He simply took the text and tried to read. That Sarma was all right, but he read it and he thought, this is another world altogether different. This is a world of symbols. And some of the hymns gave him experiences of inner life. You see, the vision of the sun, for instance. Many of us have seen it, you see, or fire. It's an inner experience, you see. Moon, the sun, the fire. You see, then he thought that he should like to read it. So he read the original and found that this is rather a sort of a reference dictionary of spiritual experiences. This is not anything to do with Aryans and non-Aryans fighting. This has nothing to do with, history and sociology. This has nothing to do with the Dravidians and the Aryans and so on. This is a sort of a collection of inner experience gathered by these people. And so he thought, all right, let me see. Then he took straightforward meaning of whatever word he found, simple grammar, and found that yes, it's the sense it's quite all right, cogent. Now, then he interpreted the Veda. He took some hymns and tried to give the interpretation and meaning. And he had to wade into a new world altogether because it was all against the current thought. He knew the general idea of the European Indology scholars, you see, that this is their idea. And he tried to see whether what they said had been there. He couldn't see anything there. For instance, they make so much of the word Arya. Arya. How many times is the word Arya used in the Veda, you think? Veda is a compendium of hymns or collection of hymns, 10,450 at least. 10,000 hymns. Out of that, the word Arya is used 27 times, 33 times. The word Arya is used in the whole Veda 33 times. Out of those 33 times, 26 times it is applied to Agni, the god of fire. 6 times it is applied to Indra, god of heaven. 26 plus 6, well, the rest of the time it has no reference to race fight. It is on the word Aryan, non-Aryan that they are making so much capital. This is my study. I don't require anybody else to say I have studied and I tell you from direct study of the Veda. It is used in the Veda 33 times and not more. And out of 33 times, 26 times it refers to fire, 6 times it refers to Indra, the god of heaven. It has nothing to do with a race, superior or inferior, nothing to do with non-Aryans and fight and nothing of the kind. That's one. Second proof which you can consider is the use of psychological words which the Veda contains. If you say that they were in such a primitive time that they did not know, anything about succession of day and night, or the prayer says in some of the hymns that oh, we have prayed to the fire and the dawn has come. And these Western people, poor fellows, they interpret that they believed actually that they're putting the wood into the fire makes the sun rise. Now, they were not so idiotic because in the hymns themselves there are lots of hymns in which they say, just as a succession of night and day is a fixed mode of behavior of nature, let our life also be a harmonious and happy succession of the truth. Now, if they did not know that coming of day and night as natural event, how would they speak? Unless you understand that this prayer means something else. Fire, we have put, we have sacrificed to thee, and the dawn has come. It is when the aspiration awakens in the heart that the spiritual awakening of the dawn takes place. Well, that is the sense. Sense is that when the aspiration is awake in the heart, when you have this will and aspiration awakening in your heart, then the spiritual dawn awakening to a new inner life comes to you. That's all that it wanted to say. They knew very well, you see, they say just as the seasons succeed and the year, the winter and the summer and, the autumn comes, let us live our full-fledged life. Now, they knew succession of dawn. They were not so stupid as to say that the sun rises because we put some wood into the fire here. They were not as stupid as that. Not at all, because they speak of the law that works in the world, the law that brings seasons in their succession, you see. Well, that is one. Apart from that, the words and psychological sense which are used are so numerous that you cannot expect such a rich vocabulary of psychology in people who have no psychological knowledge. For instance, for mind, you think how many words are used in the Veda? Mental operations. About 50 words with a shade of meaning. It will say man, to think, Buddh, to know, Chit, to be conscious. I'm using Vedic words now, you see? And then he says, Dhi, to hold, becomes to meditate. You see? It says, Vid, to know. Now, how many words for knowledge you got? Seer, for seer, poet, kavi, rishi, manishi, vipra, and so on. Dozen words. Now, for a same meaning, to find a shade requires, yes, advanced inner knowledge. Otherwise, you cannot make the shades. Even for truths, they have not used one word. Satya, Ritam. Two words for truth, Satya and Ritam. Satya is truth of being, Ritam is truth of movement, truth of action. When you realize the truth of your being, you are in truth, Satya. Rit, when you act according to truth, you are in Ritam. So even the proper nouns that are used in the Veda are not of individuals. The proper nouns are adjectival in their sense. Some rishi's name is Vishwamitra, but Vishwamitra means friend of all. Vishwa is all, Mitra means friend. One who is friend of all. It's not one particular person, you see, or because this is used in the plural in the Veda. This word is used in the plural. Parashara, name of a rishi. Parashara is name of a rishi. But if you analyze the meaning of the word, it means one who defeats or conquers his enemies. Paran shatayati iti parashara. And it is used as an adjective of Indra. Indra is called Parashara, conqueror of his enemies. Now, if it was only a proper name, how could it be used as an adjective of a god? You see, there are number of things, key words in the Veda which have to be understood. For instance, go. This day, in Sanskrit language, go means ray and cow. Even today, a man can write that and be correct. Even today, after so many thousands of years, that word has a double meaning right up to now. Go means cow, ray of light. Senses. Senses are called go. because they graze in the field. Man's sense, eyes, nose, ear, and so on, they are called also cows, go. You see, and Krishna is called Gopal, one who protects the senses, one who protects the light. Oh well, you will see that Indian mind is like that. You see, it goes behind the outer meaning and brings out the psychological and symbolic significance. Ashwa is horse, but Ashwa means also energy, force, and power. And this is used throughout the Veda. In all the hymns of the Veda, when the Rishi says, "Oh, we pray for the cows," so the Western people said they were, nomadic people who were grazing cows and said, "We give us." Of course, there might have been cows. I don't say that in the social life there were no cows. Perhaps there are more ranches than you have now here, and there were more cattle there than we can afford to have. So that might have been outer life. But when the Rishi speaks of the cow, give us cows means rays of light. Give us illumination of knowledge. That's all they wanted to say. And they always speak of cows of the sun. Cows of the sun, herds of the sun. Literal meaning is herds of the sun. Now, how can herds of the sun be there? Unless you clearly, then, if you don't want to see, you can always shut your eyes and say, "We don't want to see." But if the hymn clearly says, you see, the herds of the sun, it means the rays of the sun. It can't mean anything else. And rays of the sun means knowledge, illumination of consciousness, change of consciousness from darkness to light. Sun was a symbol of illumination of knowledge, knowledge itself, embodiment or material aspect or material symbol of knowledge. And they would always say, "We pray for the sun and let the sun descend on the earth." Now, sun cannot descend on the earth will be reduced to nothing. So, you see, the idea is that the aspect of divine knowledge must come down to the man who is the representative of earth's consciousness. Well, that is how the symbolism of the Veda has been misunderstood. The cow and the horse are two well known things, but the other things, when they spoke of, was in the language of symbols. You see, it was when they said, "Oh, we are the children of Father Heaven and Mother Earth." Now, Father Heaven is Indra, the god of universal mind. And earth is the earth principle, you see, the material principle, the mental consciousness and the inconscient material consciousness. By the union or pressure of the two, the life is produced here or life is created. Well, that is all that they wanted to say, that life is a creation of the pressure of the universal mind and the pressure upon the inconscient material consciousness or material level and the mental level coming together has created life. But those things were completely misunderstood and the meaning was lost. And then we set about trying to set right all the symbolism, and the result is a big book called On the Veda, which contains his chapters of interpretation, grammatical justification, inner sense, and all the arguments to show, illustrations to show that this is the meaning of the Veda. Well, he, as I told you, stumbled upon the meaning in his sadhana, in his yogic life. And if you just get some of the ideas which he has worked out, then you will see that it makes a very interesting study. If you go to the study of early history of cultures, in every culture there was a period when mystic life, inner life was kept away from the people, and a few select people were initiated into it, and they knew the inner, process of self-development. This is well known in the Orphic mysteries and Eleusinian mystery of the Greek culture. Before the Greek classical period came, there was a period of mystics, you see, mysteries, which right up to the Delphic oracle, it persisted. You see, if you study the evolution of Greek, life, you will see that in the beginning there was a period of mystery. And ultimately, Pythagorean and post-Pythagorean period also continued some part of that mystery, you see. Now, this mystic school and symbolic, representation of inner experience is a common feature of early cultures where certain people had advanced in inner life, spiritual life, more than the classes or masses of their own times. And There is no reason, therefore, to suppose that that should not have happened in India. You see, that is one. And some people have therefore argued that no, but if they knew so much, why should they have kept it secret? But that was a common idea at that time. Even in, I think I have a Chinese man telling us something like that, you see, as to, because that was all over the world, you see, the keeping of spiritual knowledge secret, or at least reserved for the qualified people and not to be given to everybody, because it's not safe for everybody. So that was an idea that was current at one time in human history. Why was the way hidden? Why is the way hidden? This is a Chinese book. The world lost its proper course, and the course it took only led it further astray. The world and the way, being the lost to each other, how could the men of the way bring it again to the world? And how could the world rise to an appreciation of the way? Since the way had no means to make itself conspicuous in the world, and the world had no means of rising to an appreciation of the way, then, though sagely men might not keep to the hills, means men who were sages, and forests, their virtue was hidden. Hidden, but not because they themselves sought to hide it. The sages were under the compulsion of their times. When these conditions shut them up entirely from such action as they could do, they struck their roots deeper in themselves, were perfectly still, and they waited. It was thus that they preserved the way in their own persons. You see? That is how the knowledge is kept like that back in the background. Share some of the ideas, you see. For two passages I would like to read. Wait, huh? One, we see that. Interpretation is based on internal evidence of the Vedic hymns. He regards the Veda as of one piece, and even a cursory glance could show that all the mandalas, means the collections, deal with one subject matter, have a common form. It must therefore lead to one common significance. There are special words used in the Veda which are called keywords and have a double meaning. And this has grammatical justification. This double meaning is not arbitrary. Even today, as I told you, go means two. Always. You see a ray of light and cows, and even the senses, and so on. Indicates a high degree of cultural advance. A metrical form of the Vedic hymns shows a high degree of cultural advance. The hymns are not written, they are written in meter. It is prose meter, means words, not rhythm. But the evolution of rhythm itself shows that it could not be merely primitive. You see, all throughout the Vedas, symbols are used profusely, and even the ceremony of sacrifice, means the yagna, is symbolic, including even the participants and the materials. Even the materials are regarded as symbols. You see, it says when it speaks of the fire, the man who is doing the sacrifice, he is symbolic also, because it's human subjective element that is embodied there in the form of the sacrificer. And so these elements are also capable of a double meaning. Now, the words used in the way they indicate a high development of society, or at least an intellectual oligarchy. The gods and their functions are symbolic and psychological. The legends of the Veda are also symbolic and capable of psychological interpretation. We have seen this. Some of this go means the ray, and horse means Ashwa is energy and horse. Vritra is the coverer, and the demon who covers, and cloud that covers. You see, Vritra is a coverer. Like that, there are words which simply give you the meaning. You see, if you follow it, because it is too technical, I don't want to, go into those things. The sacrifice in the Veda is symbolic. Sacrifice really is a means of interchange between man and the gods. And the sacrifice in the Veda is called advara, means a pilgrimage, pilgrim rite, a rite or ceremony that moves. The word advara means moving, and sacrifice is called advara, moving. It is a pilgrimage and a battle. The officiating priest, Hota, is one who calls. Advaryu, the priest of the journey. Ritvik, one who sacrifices in the right season according to the law. The Brahma, these are the priests who officiate. You see, Brahma is the voice of the rhythm, the reciter, and the word of creative power which comes from the soul. That is the function of the Brahma. Fruits of the sacrifice are the cows and the horse, means the energy and the light, happiness and delight, Ratnam and Rai, force and willpower, Veera and Praja, which are all symbolic. Offerings, Grita, Soma, Purodas, they are all symbolic. And the small list of psychological words meaning, Satya and Rita have told you, Brihat is a word used in the Veda, vast or infinite. For infinite, Veda uses the word Brihat. Then it used for intellect, thinking, mentalizing, knowing, being aware, being conscious, being unconscious. It used the words for consciousness, chitti, for unconsciousness, achitti. At once you find that, you see, dha, to place and to think, man to think, chit to think, sumana, happy state of mind. You see, word for beauty, 5 or 6. You see, now for one with knowledge, 4 or 5 words: Dhira, Vipra, Medhavi, Vicharshani, Vipaschit, Rishi, Kavi, Pracheta. 6 or 7 words to indicate a man of knowledge, and each with a shade. It doesn't mean that you can use one for the other. No. It is a particular reference will require only one particular word. This vocabulary of psychological sense, which is, I'm not giving you complete list because it is not used. We are not a scholarly meeting and it's no use. But it indicates clearly that the people were not so uneducated as not to understand what they were doing, and it was only reserved to the Western scholars to come to our help and tell us what they meant. In fact, they came to tell us what they did not mean. That's what they are telling us, it what they did not exactly mean. Because these people who can use these subtle shades of psychological meaning about knowledge, about thinking, about consciousness, about one with illumination or knowledge, well, they certainly could convey what they wanted to convey. And it is only they kept the key secret in their hands because they didn't want this knowledge to go out to the common man. That's all. And that was the one part of all secret knowledge, all spiritual knowledge at one time in every culture, not only in India. Now, of course, the river Saraswati is the flow of inspiration. It's not a river, you see, but Saraswati also is the name of a river. But it's a flow of inspiration coming from beyond the mind, above the mind, and it runs down into the head or into the mind, mental being, like a flow of water. That's why it was called Saraswati. Saraswati is not a river only, but it's a flow of inspiration. So, like that, there are thousands of meanings which can be directly traced to the, you see, Veda also speaks not only of gods, these people's one contention, and I think Max Muller invented one word, henotheism, in order to indicate I think the theistic attitude of the Veda. Henotheism, he wanted to say by henotheism that when the rishi praises or gives his worship to one god, he evokes all the gods into that one god. This is called henotheism. I don't know why it should be so called, but people have no idea of becoming intelligent by inventing new words. But there's a fact in the Veda that they never divided the gods from one from the other. And the aspect of the one who is all is also spoken of in the Veda. Here I will give you some text which shows. It is argued that the Veda speaks of gods, but does not speak of the one, the infinite, and the Brahman, and therefore monistic Vedanta are not really founded on the Veda. This is not true, though it must be emphasized that the Vedic seers are not laying down any schools of philosophy when they are speaking of the gods. You must not expect Veda to speak on everything. Veda was not written to give you marriage ceremony. Veda was not written to give you knowledge of history of the times. I mean, if you take up a book on algebra and try to find out the marriage customs or social life of the time, how will you find out? It is only meant to give algebra. You can't find it out. A book on engineering will not nothing about poetry. And then you say, no, but there must be some poem somewhere. Well, it's nonsense to try to find out like that. The purpose of the Vedic hymn must be first gauged. The purpose was to give knowledge. Veda means knowledge. Now, therefore, its purpose was not to give a ceremony but knowledge. Then you must find out what that knowledge was. Instead of that, you're busy with social life and archaeology and mineralogy and the Vedic climate and Vedic ceremony and marriage life and inheritance and history and customs. But how can you find it when it was not written for that? You can't find it there. That's what they don't find. Now, here are hymns, not a dividing power. And they hold all the gods were names. Matari Indram, Matarishwanam Ahu. That is the text, you see. The being is one, Ekam Sat. Vipra, man of knowledge, Bahuda Vadanti speak of it in many ways. And they speak of it as Agni, they speak of it as Indra, they speak of it as Vayu, they speak of it as various gods. But they know that it is one God to whom of whom they are speaking. So the idea and concept of the one was already there. Not only then one. Tat ekam. In 3 or 4 places in the hymns, the word that one is used. In the other, ritam brahat, the truth that is vast, that is spoken. The truth that is infinite, that is spoken there. Mahat devanam asuratvam ekam. There is only one power that gives its sustenance to all the gods. That's the translation, you see. So there you find the rishi speaking in hymns of the one. It may be of interest in conclusion to put out certain hymns that evidently bear spiritual and symbolic significance. The whole sukta, whole hymn, first mandal 163rd, is openly symbolic. It is dedicated to horse. Who is the god? In each hymn, first the god is mentioned. So who is the god of this first mandal 163rd hymn? Horse. And the description of the horse is, this is the horse that rises from the sea. I'm giving a rough translation, almost literal. He is swift like the hawk. The horse is Yama god. He is the Aditya, son of, Aditi, the infinity. The horse has golden horns. He has steel hooves. A horse with golden horn and steel hooves. It has speed of mind. Manojava. That's the word, you see. Oh, he is like one who is little less than Indra the god. The horse, our Indra Asit, like another Indra or less than Indra. Swift like mind, golden horns, steel hooves. What? That's a, if that is a horse, and if the Western people say, well, it's the most marvelous, ridiculous combination of nonsense, I wouldn't be surprised. But they evidently meant something symbolic. They meant to say that it was the power that was at work in the cosmos. As I told you, the whole universe is symbolized as a horse sacrifice. Ashwamedha, it is called in Sanskrit language. Ashwamedha is a horse sacrifice. The whole universe is the horse. Energy, universal energy and power embodied in the cosmos is called a horse. And the universe continues because there is this sacrifice of the cosmic being is going on. And Usha, the dawn, is the head of horse sacrificial. That is the text in one of the Upanishads. Not only Veda, but Upanishad even continue the image of the Vedic, times. So he says, Usha vai asya medyasya shirah. This dawn is the head of horse sacrificial. Sun is the eye, and so on. And time, Kala, is the Atma, the soul of this cosmic movement, time. Well, that is the symbol that is put there, which shows clearly that the Vedic rishis speak of the symbolic language, their message, and the modern time finds it very difficult to accommodate its intelligence to that point. That working of the Vedic mind. And that is why we don't like to take back the modern mind to that time where you have to accustom yourself to such unfamiliar, figures that it will say, oh, fire, thou art born as my son. You see? Because when the aspiration is born in the human being, as a result of his sacrifice or his giving up, then he is born to him as his son. Though he says that, oh, therefore thou art the father of thy father. The Agni is addressed as, thou art the son and thou art the father of thy father. You are the origin of one who has the mind because it is born of the fire, that the mental consciousness. And therefore, when its reference is made, it is as it were the child is the father of the father. Yes. Well, it is always that symbolic way of putting things, you see. And in the Vedic text itself, more than 4 times, you find the mention in the hymns themselves that these hymns have a mystic meaning. The Rishi speaks like that. Nanya vacham, secret words. And that is 4 times in the whole of Veda. Different Rishi is when he speaks of, you want to know my meaning, he says. Oh, my meaning. You cannot know my meaning unless you know what I mean. Yes, you see? And you see, you cannot know. And then he says, oh, fire. This is in the fourth mandal. Oh, fire, I have addressed these words to you. But they are secret words. Nanya vachamsi. They make their meaning clear to one who knows. And to one who does not know, well, what can he make of it? There is in the first mandal, in the 164th sukta, a hymn that says, Richo akshare parame vyoman. The true hymn, Richa is hymn. All the Vedic hymns are called Richas. Richo, this hymn is not here. It is in the supreme ether. Parame Vyoman, in the supreme ether. It's not here. Yes, Tanna Veda. One who doesn't know that. Kim Rucha Karishati. What will the hymns do for him? The hymn is not here. Hymn is in the supreme ether. Infinite consciousness. One who doesn't know that, what will the Richa do to him? Kim Richa Karishati. Oh, then he says, 1/4 of that is expressed here. 3/4 of it is held back, unexpressed in the heaven. I'm giving you a little translation of the Vedic words, Vedic hymns, you see, which shows that the rishis themselves speak of a symbolic, mystic meaning behind their outer, symbols, the outer objects of which they spoke in their hymns. The objects are only symbolic, meant to convey some other sense, than the outer object only. And that is the utility of a symbol. Symbol is only a material representation of something which is not material. And man has always been using symbols throughout, even now in the age when we say we are intellectual and logical and material, non and practical. Even now our symbols have not ceased. You take a national flag. What is a national flag? A piece of cloth, isn't it? But it is for that piece of cloth hundreds of people will die. Because it is not a piece of cloth, you see? It is not a piece of cloth. If you see, it is a piece of cloth, but it's not only a piece of cloth. Symbols are all over life. You can't do without symbols. Life cannot go on. I mean, the otherwise you have to, you have to give something by which you can say this intangible, or the inner feeling of country. How are you going to give it to every man in a concrete form otherwise? You have to make a map, you have to make a sign, you have to make a symbol. You call it a, you can call it lion. You put any sign, or, the eagle or bear, but you put something that carries some sense to the man. Then it becomes symbolic. British lion. Now, lion is a beast. Britain is a beast. But that symbol, you see, it is like that. National flag. You have always some symbolic sense. So symbols have been all through life. And the Vedic time, they took the outer ceremonials and used it for conveying the world of experience which they had. And that world of experience is a very rich spiritual world in which the seekers are seeking truth, light, and delight. The three things which they want is Surya, the sunlight, the sun, to enter into the sun and bring the sun down. They want to know and they want to have full knowledge, and that knowledge which really makes the man realize immortality. Amritam, ambrosia, that is the word they use. Immortality. The seeking was for knowledge of the truth which gives them immortality. That is the central seeking purpose. Purpose is to reach a knowledge which will give man immortality. So truth and immortality, that is his way. And the way is through ignorance, through difficulty, through desires, through ordinary egoism, and trying to get beyond that by sacrifice, by awakening the fire of aspiration within them and continuing the process of sacrifice in life, so that the human consciousness goes on rising from plane to plane. The sacrifice was, outer sacrifice was only symbol of the inner sacrifice. You have to awaken the flame of fire within your heart or within your mind and go on sacrificing egoism, desire, and ambition, and greed, and selfishness into that fire, so that you will be more and more divested of or relieved of the elements of ignorance and will rise to the plane of the truth. And when you reach the plane of the truth, you realize immortality. You meet that soma. Soma is the drink of immortality. You see, it is the intoxicating liquid. And they say they were drinking. The Western people said that the people are drinking. There is no more humorous, more pathetic mistake than the Western interpretation of the Veda. If there, you study the soma itself, this ambrosia, delight, and I myself have translated many of these rigs, and in several of them um, it says, "Oh, so ambrosial delight, you are born of the truths, born of faith, born of tapasya. Soma, thou art born of the truths, you are born of faith, shraddha, faith. You are born of, the tapasya, the ascesis. You are in the world of the truth, and raise me to that world of truth so that I may know your highest, the highest delight of which you are capable." Indra is said to be, when he takes Soma, he gives cows. I am giving a literal translation. When Indra takes Soma, Goda idrevato madaha, he becomes intoxicated and gives cows. Now, you see, yes, the god Indra becomes intoxicated and gives cows. Well, if you read only that, well, Indra is not a man, he is a god. Now, how can God get so out of his senses first as to lose his common sense and then only give cows? He has no cows in the heaven, perhaps, unless he comes down here and becomes a man. It only means the mental divine consciousness, when it is filled with delight, it gives you illumination of knowledge. That's all it means. Indra, when he is intoxicated with Soma, means Indra is the divine mind, the mind above mind, higher mind. And in that higher mind, when the delight is felt, ecstasy of delight, well, it creates illumination of consciousness. cows. That's how illumination of consciousness comes. But that was too much to expect from people who had never had the background, and I don't blame them. But they should say we don't understand instead of saying this makes nonsense, which is still more nonsense. It's a greater nonsense because it is a certain sense, and there's not one hymn. There are 10,450.
Have
And
they all been interpreted this way?
more than half has been done.
Norbert have been
He did more than about 3,500.
But are they all?
I
in
have
his
done
book?
about 1,000.
Are they all in his book on Veda?
Yes, yes, almost all. In the Vedic hymns, 2,500 only dedicate to fire, and the rest about 1,000 or 500 on the Veda. There you'll find. And then scattered also he has done others, 3 to 400. So it comes to about 3,500 or 4,000, about. I have made a rough estimate. It is in one of my books how much it is, you see.
What book?
Vedic dictionary, that Vedic, Sharunda's Vedic Conco, Vedic, what is it called? Glossary, Vedic glossary. I have put that in a dictionary form, this whole work.
Purani has, Purani.
Good luck to have that.
Yes, they will be coming perhaps.
Let's see, we will. Haven't given a quote.
Well, I think that's about inner word, which is symbolically expressed, you see, in their times.
But the keys been
Just one of the kings, just one,
Oh, yes, why not?
giving some.
It will say like that, Agnimile Purohitam Devanam Ratnadhatamam Bhutaram Ratnadhatamam Agni Purvebi Krishibiri Nutanairut Sadevan Iha Vakshati. Like that, to go on. People who are trained, then you will see the intonation and vibration. It's full vibration.
It is.
A very wonderful vibration. Yes, it was. You can get something from India. If you get the, sometimes they put it on morning. In Madras especially, there is a morning prayer sometimes, and the Madras people chanting the Vedic hymns can be perhaps heard here. I don't know whether the radio will get it, but it is worth hearing because they do it in the right way, and there the
recording and send it to us.
yes, the intonation is wonderful. There is no doubt about it because it is an atmosphere about it. That's what some great man said. I think it's once in evening talk said like that. It's very difficult to be vulgar in Sanskrit. You can't be vulgar, really. You cannot be vulgar. It's difficult. The stamp of aristocracy is about that language.
Some temples as part of your worship, and our worship is still
Who?
hymns, are they some?
Yes, not all use the hymns. You see, the Veda then became ceremonial, divided into ceremonies. So they were taken out as parts, kalpariks they will be called. Certain part for certain occasion. So they are used at that time only. Say, for instance, if there is a marriage ceremony, some will be repeated at marriage. Or there is a holiday, particular holiday, first day of the month, then certain rigs are repeated on that day. You see, like that. But Veda as an applied spiritual scripture has very little limited application in actual life, except two or three things. Words, marriage. In the marriage, it is the Vedic hymn that is repeated, right up to now. And that marriage hymn has nothing to do with man and woman's marriage.
What does it do?
It is a marriage of son with the, well, daughter of the sun is married to a god. And that celebration is in the Veda. So all human marriage is symbolically representative of that union of the daughter of the sun and the Ashwins. The gods are Ashwins, you see, the twins. Something that's similar to, Castor and Poly.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you see, of the Greek mythology. They are the Ashwins, riders of the horse. You see, they are Ashwins, twins,
Boy, how important.
sun and Ashwins. And that's all that ceremony. There is no mention of man and woman at all.
The Gayatri is that?
Gayatri is in the, yes, third mandal, Vishwamitra, 62nd hymn of the Rig Veda, in which it is said that we invoke the power of the sun so that it will guide our mind into, knowledge of the sun or towards the illumination of, towards the illumination.
But did you say now that it is in two parts, the Gayatri?
No, Gayatri is the third mandal. Third, you see, your Veda is divided into 10 parts, 10 mandal, 10 collections.
Mhm.
6 collections are of individual rishi, and 3 are of all people put together. You see, out of 10, not chapters, it is collections. Out of 10, 6 belong to one particular seer. One mandal belongs to one man. Like that, 6 mandals are like that. And 3 are chosen from all the various people. You see, selected from all the seers. And ninth mandal is only dedicated to Soma, the god of delight or god of wine. That is the whole structure of the Rig Veda. So in the third mandal, 62nd Gayatri mantra Gayatri hymn finds its place. It is Vishwamitra who is the seer of Gayatri.
Would you repeat the Gayatri in Sanskrit and then give a translation?
Yes. भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्. That's how it reads. Well, we meditate on the light supreme of the sun. You see? The light that is worth choosing or beautiful, one any sense you can give. Light of the sun that is worth choosing or light that is beautiful. We adore or we select. We choose that light and we pray that it may impel our mentality, impel our inner being. That's all. It may impel our inner being into proper channel that is understood, you see. Inner into light, into correct behavior, into correct thinking. Let it impel our minds. That's all it says.
You use the word human,
No, impel.
impel.
Yes, it is impulsion. The sun god, you see. Yes. We adore or we choose the light of the sun god. The light that is praiseworthy or light that is delightful, you see. That's it. Beautiful.
Our mind, what?
Hmm?
I missed that right. We pray at night and tell our mind.
And understanding is impel our minds into, well, proper channels or knowledge or correct behavior or truth or whatever it is kept understood, you see. Let that light impel our minds. That's all. Go on our desire, but that light. You see, the point is to seek initiation or impulsion from the supreme light and not from anything else.